Hi, so I'm going to take you through a few of the rules and regulations in knitting two-coloured rib. Loads of folk think that the two-coloured rib is a non-elastic rib, and it's a rib, so it is elastic, so I would like to discount that myth. The other thing that folk get wrong is they mix up the background and the pattern colour, which leaves them with an ugly looking rib sometimes. So that's the two main things that I want to look at when knitting the two-coloured rib. So the first you need to decide when you're doing two-coloured rib is which is your background colour and what's your pattern colour. The cast on row and your first round is in single colour, and that's your background colour. So I have cast on. You can use circular needle or DP-ends for this. I'll go through the process on DP-ends. Some of this is not a problem for circular. But joining that two stitches, the end and the beginning, can be, you can leave a gap. And what I do with that is I slip the last 4 stitches onto the spare needle and take it round the corner. That means you don't have a corner to do, and it tightens up the stitches. The other thing I do is I cast on 1 stitch more than I need, and that 1 stitch I slip over to the working needle as well, and then I take the tail through that gap and put it to the back. That finishes off the, and I should have had the yarn I'm going to knit with at the back. That happens a lot, so you get it in the wrong place. So slip that 1 stitch and pass your tail to the back. That neatens up that join. And then we're knitting. Knit 2, purl 2, right to the end of the wire. So the last 4 stitches on this needle is knit 2, purl 2, and then we're on a corner again. So I do the same here as I did at the beginning. You can see that threads pulling out, getting loose. So I pass the last 4 stitches. 4 stitches because it's knit 2, purl 2, and you want each row to start with a knit 2. Pass them onto the spare needle and take it round the corner. And then keep knitting, and that loose stitches, that loose threads will just sort themselves out. Knit 2, purl 2, and do that to the end of the needle again. So the end of the second needle, and I do the same, pass that 4 stitches onto the spare needle and take it round the corner, and this is on to the last 4 cast on stitches. So it's knit 2, and then you have purl 2, and then you're starting your pattern colour, and here's where I would tie on the second colour. It anchors it. You don't want to tie it on right next to where you're going to start, and you don't want to tie it on in the middle of 2 purl stitches. So the next 2 is 2 purl, so it's 1 purl stitch, and then the next one is the last cast on stitch, and that extra stitch that I cast on, I knit those together, and that really tightens up that join at the start and end of the cast on row. Now we're on to 2 colours. So this is where it's discussed which is the dominant colour, and the dominant colour you want to be the pattern colour. But the easiest way to look at it is if you look at your background colour, and your background colour is always on the first finger of your right hand. It doesn't matter how you set up your yarn. I use two fingers on my right hand, so my background colour is on the first finger and the pattern's on the second finger. If you use a right and a left hand, then the background colour is on the first finger of your right hand and the pattern colour is on your left hand. So it is knit 2 in the pattern colour and purl 2 in the background colour. And you do that across your needle. If you're on a circular needle, you don't have a problem with corners. If you're on DPNs in the round, you've got a corner. And we do the same. I do the same thing with this as I did on the cast on. You come to the end and I pass 4 stitches over onto the empty needle and take that round the corner, and that means you don't have a corner to go round. It's you're round it. And you always start with a knit 2, or try always to start with a knit 2. Set up your stitches to do that. It's easier than going straight into a purl 2. And I do that all the way through on a 2-coloured rib. If you don't, you end up with the 2 purl stitches. You end up with a carry thread across the 2 purl stitches being tight, and the 2 purl stitches pop up. So if my next stitch is that pattern colour on the next row, you tend to pull it tight, and those 2 purl stitches pop up and they look a little bit ugly. So again, it is slip 2 stitches, purl and 2 stitches in knit, and take them round the corner. And that's the process of knitting 2-coloured rib. So continue on, and you come back to the start of your round. When you keep passing stitches, the start of your round moves, so a marker in here would be helpful. The reason for knitting, having this pattern colour on your second finger, is that you carry the pattern thread below the background thread, and it makes a slightly bigger stitch, so it becomes more prominent. If you're using 2 threads on your left hand, which I can't do very well, you need to decide where you pick up where each colour sits and where you pick up that colour from. That would be correct. So you're picking up the background colour above the pattern colour, if you can see that happening. But you can check it on the back of your work. If I finish these 2 threads, you can see it on the back that the threads are carried in a different position. So you can see the background colour there is above the pattern colour there. So that's what you always want to see. That covers knitting in the round as to how you carry your threads on your hands. But if you're knitting a 2-coloured rib flat, then the knit side and the purl side, you need to carry your threads differently. So on the knit side, it's the same. So your background colour is on the first finger and it's the purl stitch, and the pattern colour is on your second finger and it's the knit stitch. So that's the end of the row. Then you turn and knit back on the purl side. If you twist that threads around each other, it connects. Your background colour is now a knit stitch on the wrong side. So knit those two. But then you want your pattern colour to flow below the background colour. So you need to change your fingers round. You do get into a rhythm with this, but another way to remember it is that the knit stitch, the purl stitch is always nearest you in this one. The knit stitch, you have to put your thread to the other side. So that finger is furthest away from you. It's easier. It takes practice. With practice, you get into a rhythm, and you don't. You're not so clumsy. You're clumsy when you're knitting it to begin with. But you can see with this one, that's the background colour, and it's carried above the pattern colour, which is the brown. So I've knitted 2 samples, just to let you see what happens when you knit it correctly and when you knit it incorrectly, to see what happens. So my 2 little pieces, they don't fit a distance, they really don't look any different, but this one is knitted correctly, and when you pull it you can see the knit stitches with the purl sinking a little bit below. On this one it's knitted incorrectly, and when I pull it you should, I hope you can see it in the film, that the purl stitches are sitting up above the knit stitches. You should be able to see it perhaps on the bottom row, where these knit stitches sit up and then sink. So I usually do processes, not products, and this was to be a process video, but I ended up with a product in it. I ended up with little mitts of wrist warmer, and I needed to do 2. I needed to show one before it was blocked and one after it was blocked, and then show this being steamed to make an elastic rib. It's blocked, and you can block on anything. I use cereal packets. It works really well, and you block it a little bit bigger than it was knitted. This does end up to be quite big, and it is, the thumb opening was sewn up so it didn't split open. So this is now a little loose and not as nice as that one really, and this is flat, it's non-elastic now. So I will change this and show you what we do with this to make this an elastic rib. So for this you need your ironing board, you need the piece that you're going to steam, you need a dish towel, a tea cloth, this is a nice cloth napkin, and a basin of water. You wet this completely and wring it out. So that's completely wet. Then with your iron on its hottest setting, or at least on cotton, your wet cloth is laid on top of what you're going to steam, and you steam it. You set your iron completely on, and you want it to steam. You're doing no damage to the wool because the iron is not touching it. And then you pull it. You can do it on both sides. Your iron must never touch your wool. It should only be on top of your wet cloth, and that's hot. Somehow or other I like to do that. I don't know why, but I do. That's taking that back down to the size it should be. And you've got an elastic rib. You can pull that further. So you now have an elastic rib. It isn't as elastic as a single coloured rib, but it's still an elastic rib. So putting the mitts on, you can see the difference. And we have a pair of mitts. Very simple pattern. This was cast on 56 stitches, 52 or 56 stitches. This is 52. And I knitted 20 rows in the round. Then I knitted 14 rows going back and forth, leaving the opening, and then joined up again to 10 rows in the round, 1 row off in the one colour and cast off, and knit 2 of them, and you have a pair of mitts. So I hope that simplifies 2-colour rib for you.